This will be a review for the final exam in Math 1108. Now, basically what I've done is try to see the kinds of problems, examples, that you will get on a final exam. And then we're looking, what is the strategy to solve to get an answer? So, again, it is somewhat comprehensive. There's only about 20 questions in all, so it's not too bad, but you want to see what we can do. So as we look at the first one, and again, I would, if I were a student, copy this down, and before I give the answer, try it. See if you can figure it out for each of these. Otherwise, I'll just go through as we go and show you the strategy to get the answer. So in using the FOIL, first is x squared. Outers plus 4x. Inners plus 7x. Last plus 28. Combine like terms and you get x squared plus 11x plus 28. Now notice if this were your original example here, and they asked you to factor it, then you would hopefully end up with something like this as you reverse the FOIL. All right, question number 2. Find the range. Well, the strategy for this, and take a moment, is what is the lowest number in all of these? Well, it's 20. What is the largest number as you scan them? 53. So the strategy, take the largest, subtract the smallest, and your range now is 33. All right, we'll erase this and raise it up. Copy the next one down. Now I shorten a lot of the instruction that you would find normally on your final exam, but here we're asked to factor out the negative and get the result. So as we look at this, what's the largest factor negative that we can take out of each term? So as we look at this, see a negative 44, negative 22. Now we know we can take a 2 out. We can also take a 4, no. But studying it, actually we could take a negative 22 out. 22 is the common factor. And now we're left here with a positive 2x, and here a positive y. And that's our answer. And remember, you check by multiplying and getting a negative 44x here and a negative 22y. Now, if you didn't take out a negative 22, we'd probably give you some credit, but here they wanted you to factor out the largest common factor that is negative. Now in number 4, we know that this value here for t is going to be a 5. So basically we're just doing some substitution. So 0.04 times 1 minus e, that's Euler's e, to the negative 0.2, and 2 times our t here is going to be a 5. Now, 0.2 times 5 is going to be a 1. So we can actually change this and make this a -1. That'll be much easier to calculate. All right, take a moment, put that in your calculator and see what you get. And we want to round to 3. So when I do that, I get this. And if we're rounding to 3 decimal places, 1, 2, 3, we go to the 4th. And since that's a 2, we're going to drop all of this. And then that's our answer. Now, if that 2 was a 5 or more, we would drop it and then add 1 to this 5, and the answer would be 0.026. Now, I've been seeing lots of rounding errors as I've been checking the blue sheets, so be careful about what they're asking and follow directions. It's better to get it correct than, waiting for partial credit. I think that makes you feel a lot better. All right, let's go on. They're asking us to solve this quadratic equation. It doesn't factor. They ask us first to find A, B, and C. So our A is a 2. Our B is a -4. And our C is a -7. And there's the quadratic formula. So you want to substitute this into the quadratic formula and then get what x would be. Notice it's going to be a plus and minus unless our discriminant is 0. And remember, if our discriminant is negative, then there are no real solutions. So to take this in steps, I've substituted now our A, B, and C into the quadratic formula. And when I simplify the discriminant, this adds up to 72. Remember, we have a negative times a negative. So this is going to become positive. 4 times 2 is 8 times 7 is 56. Add the 16, that gives you 72. Remember, when you square this b squared, it will always be positive. And if you have 2 negatives in this arrangement here, this will become positive. So you need to be careful. Now this is all over 4. Now as we look at 72, if I tease it apart, it's 2 and 36. 36 is a perfect square. So we get the radical 72 will divide into the square root of 36 times the square root of 2. The square root of 36 is 6, the square root of 2. So then this will become then 4 plus or minus 6, the square root of 2, all over 4. And as you probably can imagine now, this, we can factor a 2 out of there. So I'm running out of room, so I'll put it up here. So this will be 2 times 2 plus or minus 3, the square root of 2, all over 2. I'm going to make it 2 times 2. So now we have a common factor. And then our final answer here will be 2 plus or minus 3, the square root of 2, all over 2. and you'll probably have to write it twice, once with the plus, once with the minus. Remember, our discriminant was positive, so we end up with two real number solutions. If it were a 0, we would only have one real number solution that is repeated, and if it were negative, there would be no real number solutions. Now, for this next one, again, pause the tape, write it out, and you'll probably want to make a Venn diagram. And let's see what you get when you fill it in. So if you started off with something like this, our universe is 900. We have 624 tour guides. We have 450 retirees and 340 retirees were tour guides. So there's that. So now what you need to do is figure out what goes on either side here. So if we subtract the 340 from 450, we get 110 here. And if we subtract the 340 from 624, we get 284 here. And then now let's see what they're asking. By the way, if we added these three up and then subtracted it from this, these would be part of our volunteers that were neither of these. But let's see what they're asking. How many volunteers were tour guides but not retirees? So that answer would be the 284. These would be tour guides, but not retirees. So that one wasn't too bad. Now, in this next one, what is the probability of selecting an I or a P from this word? Happens to be Mississippi. All right. Strategy would be, well, how many items are in our sample field? So we count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Our sample field is 11. And what are we looking for? We're looking for an I or a P. So there's an I. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we get then 6 out of 11 is the fractional form. You could get a decimal form and put it in, but usually the fractional forms are easier. Now, in the actual final exam, they give you a nice graph. I kind of sketched this one and I put in some guidelines to help us find things. So this relates to chapter 6. They want us to find the slope, which is m. I'll go back to red here too. I like red. Well, if we have 2 points, we have this one, and in a sense we have this one. Now what is the ordered pair of this one? Well, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, a negative 4, and then we count up from our 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That would be one ordered pair. And then this one is nice because it's on the y-axis. It's our y-intercept, which is going to be 0, comma, 1, 2, negative 3. Now, also, you could, put that in the slope formula, or you could just count it. It's going to go over 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a negative direction, so it's a negative 4 for our x values. And then it goes up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Goes up 8. So when we simplify that, that simplifies to a negative 2 over 1. So our slope here is going to be negative 2. Now they're also asking, what is the y-intercept? Where the line crosses the y-axis. Well, it crosses it at this 0, negative 3. Now I recall on the blue sheets when I checked this earlier, some of you were just putting the negative 3 without the proper way of expressing the y-intercept, which is 0, b. And I would give you partial credit, but put it in this way. Now, what's the equation of the line? Well, we know the y-intercept now, and we know the slope. So it's y equals mx plus b. So it'll be y equals, we know our slope now is negative 2. We have to put in the x, and then it's going to be a negative 3. And that's the equation of this line and the strategy for picking it out. Now, this is prepared to give you the variety of the kinds of things that might be on the final. So here's one where you're dealing with exponents. This one happens to be positive, and we're going to use the power rule. So negative 5 squared is 25. X squared is x squared. Now, when we do the bottom, we're going to get y to the negative 6, but we don't want negative exponents. So y to the negative 6 in the denominator comes up to the numerator as y to the positive 6. And that's the answer to this one. Again, there'll be others that will challenge. All right, we're going to need some room for this, so I'll move it up. Now, we've done a few like this. Again, they give you more detail, but I've summarized it. You're on a platform 10 feet. You're going to shoot an arrow. How long does it take to get to the ground? This is the formula. So the first thing we need to do is substitute into this formula. So we're going to have a negative 16 t squared. Now our initial velocity is going to be 186 t from the formula, our v sub o, initial velocity, and then our initial height is 10. And then of course this all equals 0 on this end. Now again, this is not going to factor, so you're going to use the quadratic formula. Now, I had mentioned that if your a value is positive, it makes it a little easier to compute. So I'm going to change all these signs. As I define a, it's going to be the opposite sign of this, which will be 16. Our b is going to be a negative now, 186. And our c is going to be a negative 10. So now you want to substitute into the quadratic formula. So our b is this, so a negative b would be the positive 186. Now we can throw out the minus because we're not going to use it. So plus the square root of 186 squared minus 4a, which is now a positive 16, and our C, which is a negative 10. And this is all over 2 times 16. 2 times A is 32. So note what you can do here. First, you want to check your signs here. Negative times a negative will make this a positive. So you're going to square 186 plus add this product to it, take the square root of that, add 186 to it, divide by 32. And I'll give you what I get, and hopefully that's what you get. So after doing all of that, I get 11.6785. But the instructions were to round to the single decimal, 1 decimal place. So I go to the second decimal place, which is a 7. I'm going to drop all of this, but add 1 now to the 6. So this becomes 11.7. Now, if you put this in, they're going to count it wrong. They wanted you to round to 1 decimal place. But if that's on the blue sheet, you did all your substitution right, your error is only in rounding, you're going to get lots of partial credit. So again, good reason why you show lots of work, or all of the work, on your blue sheet, neatly and orderly, so I can do that. Now, in this example, we're asked to solve for the letter x. Well, this is in logarithmic form. If we convert it to its exponential form, our base is 2, our exponent is 4, and that will equal 16. So x is 16. All right, let's go on. Now, for number 12, they're asking us to find the x and y intercepts and then graph it. So for this, very definitely you want to make a t-chart, which is the x and y intercept t-chart, where you put a 0 there and a 0 there. So if x, this x here is a 0, this becomes 0. And now we just solve for y, which is a negative 5/4. Now this is your y-intercept, 0, b. Now if your y is a 0, you put a 0 here, and 4 times 0 is 0, so you now get 7x equals a negative 5. So you solve for the x, and that'll be a negative 5/7. And again, this is your x-intercept, which is a, 0. You put that in the correct places, the graph forms, and that would be number 12. All right, let's go on to number 13. We're asked to find the product of 2 consecutive even integers is this. Find the integers. Well, our formula would be if x is 1 integer, then the next consecutive even integer is that integer plus 2, and the product is 168. So we've done things like this before. We get x squared as we distribute plus 2x, and then we transpose the 168 to the other side and put it in standard form of the quadratic equation. Now, since these are integers, this is going to factor. So we know this is going to be x, and we're wondering now factors of 168 that have a difference of 2. So I would use this technique. Divide that by 2. This is going to be 84. Divide that by 2. This is 42. Divide that by 2. This is 21. Now I can take a 3, and then we have a 7. So I have the prime factorizations. Now as I look through this, I have to find combinations. So if I take this one, let's say, and this is a 2 times 2 is 4 times 3 is 12. I'll put that over here. And then these two are 14. That looks like my factors here, 12 and 14. And I have a difference of 2 here. So this will be a plus for the 14, a minus for the 12, equal each of these parts to 0. This is x equals 12. Here x equals a negative 14. We want positive integers, so we reject that one. So our x would be a 12, and x plus 2 is 14, and 12 times 14 is 168. Now, you might try other things, 2 even integers. You might say, well, 10 times 12, that's 120. And then you might say, you know, brainstorm a little bit to get the factors. But this is a for sure method, and this technique is useful in a number of ways. All right, let's go on. Again, the way to do this is you read the problem, write it out, try it on your own, and then I'll show the strategy. So graph this equation by finding 2 ordered pairs. Well, for this, I would make a little t-chart. And I know that if x is 0, I always want to use 0 for one of them. If x is 0, this is 3y equals 0, so this is also 0. So there's an ordered pair going through the origin. Now if I solve this for y, I get 3y equals a negative 7x. Divide everything by 3. I get then y equals a negative 7/3 x. Well, I want to find another item, and I don't want fractions. So what value of x might I use here? Well, if x were 3, this is a 3. The 3's would cancel out. My y would be negative 7. So these are some nice ordered pairs. You put that in your software, and then the graph forms, and that's the equation. For number 15, find the equation of A, in which the slope is 0, and it goes through this point. And then for B, the slope is undefined and goes through this point. Well, here you have to remember that any slope of 0 is a horizontal line, and the equation of a horizontal line is y equals b. Now, for any slope that's undefined, this is a vertical line, and the slope for all vertical lines is x equals a. Now, we had said you can sometimes write the ordered pair as a comma b. So what would this equation be if we're looking for our b? Well, y equals 3. And this one, if x equals a, x equals 4. Now again, there's lots of math background here, and hopefully we're bringing some of this to the surface as we review. Now, for these next two, we're asked to find the pH. And again, there's more detail in the question, but I've summarized it here. So what would your formula be that you're going to put into your calculator? Well, it's going to be negative log, and then we're going to just put in, and usually a parenthesis comes up on your calculator, 2.37 times 10 to the negative 6. Close that parenthesis, and let's see what you get. Try this. So when I put this into my calculator, I get this, and they ask you to round to 1 decimal place. So 5.62, it's a 2, less than 5, so we just drop all of this. So our answer is 5.6. All right, let's see what you get when you put this as your I sub O, your initial value, which is going to go here. The 25 goes in the numerator. You should get something like this, 10 log. Then the parenthesis will come, and you're going to put 25, and then divided by 10 to the negative 10, and then see what you get. And when I do it, I get 113.9794. They want you to round to 2 decimal places. So you go to the third, it's a 9, you're going to drop that, and then this becomes 113.98. You add 1 to the 7. We are almost finished. There's only 19 questions on this final. So here's number 18. And rather than try to sketch it out and draw it for you, I've actually done it like this. So pause it, read it. You want to fill in the question marks here and there, and this takes time. So strategy for doing it, there are 37 in the universe here. So this is 37. Now I told you as I do it, I have to check things off. So 14 members visited Germany. So Germany is going to be 14. So I check that off. 15 have been to Spain. So this is going to be 15. And I can check that off. 19 have visited France. 19. I check that off. 10 have been to Germany and France. So when I look at Germany and France, I see 7 and 3. This is the 10, so that's done. 7 have only been to Spain, so that's this down here, only to Spain. 6 have been only to France, and that's this 6 here. Check that off. 3 have been only to Spain and France. Spain and France, this 3 here. 3 have been to all 3 countries, and that's this one right there. Now, do I have enough information to fill in my question mark here for Germany? Well, I have 7 and 3 is 10 plus 2 is 12. If I subtract it from the 14, I get a 2. So this is a 2. So now, am I able to figure out how many travel to a country and then what is left in the universe? Because that's actually our question. How many have not been to Germany, Spain, or France? So I add all these up and I get 30. And if I subtract that 30 from 37, I get then 7 is what's left of the universe after I have this and the answer to this question here. And hopefully that is helpful for you. But these are a little tedious, and it takes time to understand what's there and then the strategy to get the answer. Now, for our last one, again, pause it, read it over, see if you can figure it out. Okay, so what I would do is I'd add up these. This is 1, 3, 6, 7, 8. This is 2, 4, and then 6. This is going to be 11. So our total population, our sample space, is 19. Now, what are they asking? Choose the number of student government board is a graduate student or lives off campus. So here we know these live off campus. And then there's one other that lives on campus that's a graduate student. So this is 11, and this one here makes it 12. And that is the answer, and that winds up our practice tests for the final exam.